All right, let's talk Seattle Seahawks. This has been arguably the most active team this entire offseason. Of course, they've made big move after big move after big move, and it's just been a continuous stream day after day, week after week, bringing in a lot of veterans, trading players, releasing players. There seems to be a method to the madness, though, a really smart strategy kind of underlying what John Schneider, Seattle Seahawks general manager, is doing here. We'll break that down in just a second. But first, I'm Nick, that's Andrew, and this is Saturday Morning Inspection. All right, the Seattle Seahawks, as everyone I'm sure is very well aware of, has made just a ton of huge deals across the board. It's hard to really understand what the Seahawks strategy here. So without further ado, let's go into sort of a high-level analysis of what's going on and what the Seattle Seahawks are clearly doing here. So we've got a little table here. Let's go ahead and pull it up. On the left there, you've got what the Seahawks had in their 2024 PFF grade. Of course, we got DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, and Geno Smith. And in the middle there, you've got the Seahawks replace them with, and those three players there, Cooper Kupp, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, and Sam Darnold with their 2024 PFF grades right next to it. And then on the far right, you've got their additional assets, right? Whatever they picked up, cap space, if it was a trade and they got draft picks. I know there were some other picks, for example, the DK Metcalf deal where there's some other swaps going on. I just stuck to the first three rounds there just to keep it simple, and that's where the high value is anyway. So if you start at the top there with DK Metcalf, they replaced DK Metcalf with Cooper Kupp, and we see a roughly 3-point drop in PFF grade. That's not insignificant, but that's not a whole lot. So they went from 74 to 71. Okay, that's almost a fair swap right there in terms of what they've done. And they picked up $15 million of APY in cap space. That's per year, cap expenditure average per year. And they got a second round draft pick. That's what they got from the Steelers in return for trading DK Metcalf. You go to the middle there, Tyler Lockett, they released him for Marquez Valdez-Scantling. They signed him. As a result of that, they got about $10 million of cap space on an APY basis and a loss of about 3.5 points in PFF grade. And then finally, Geno Smith. They basically replaced Geno Smith for Sam Darnold. They traded Geno Smith, got that third round pick from the Raiders, and opened up what I'm going to project to be about $10 million in APY because Geno Smith reportedly is going to get $45 million with the Raiders per year. It hasn't been announced yet. The Seahawks gave Darnold about 33 on an average basis over the next 3 years. So I'm going to call that roughly 10 million. Hasn't been finalized with the Raiders, but that seems to be what all reports are indicating. So if you look here overall, if you just kind of add all these numbers up, back of the envelope math, the Seattle Seahawks gave up on average at wide receiver 3 points, at quarterback 3 points, right? Not insignificant, but not a whole lot either, right? Teams gave up a whole lot more. And in return, they got a grand total of $45 million of APY cap space. And again, on an average per year basis, that's not this season. We're talking over the next 2, 3, 4 years. And they got a second round pick and a third round pick. This is actually a really good job by the Seattle Seahawks general manager, John Schneider. A lot of people wonder, are they rebuilding? Are they just, what are they doing here? I think they're just doing good trades, right? This is just good, solid business investment decision, analytical mindset here, giving up a little bit, right? Little PFF grade for a big assets, tens of millions of dollars of cap space, and multiple day two draft picks. This is really good roster management. This is what teams like the Eagles with Howie Roseman are doing. I think they're following that same model here. Now they've got a lot of flexibility. What comes next is really important. But if there's any concern with the moves the Seattle Seahawks are making, looking at this table should relieve that concern. There's a clear strategy here. The Seahawks are building up a really great asset base. They got to deploy it now, but this is part of a really smart strategy. Miles, I'm curious what your thoughts are on all of this. But Seahawks fans, you first in the comment section below. Up to this point, now that you've kind of seen the summary of the data here, how would you grade Seattle's offseason? Do you hate it? You think it's an F? Are you kind of in wait and see mode? Give it a C. Or now that you see the data and you've looked at the numbers and realized what they've gotten in return in totality, you think, well, maybe it's an A offseason. Whatever it is, grade the Seattle Seahawks offseason up to this point. A lot of things can change, of course, in the comment section below. But Miles, over to you now. What are your thoughts now that we've seen the data here and talked about it with the Seattle Seahawks?
Yeah, I thought the Seahawks, it was, if you take emotion out of it, if you put the logic into it and look at what they're doing, I always thought this was a good move in the first place. When you break it down like that and show that they basically have 1 to 2 top tier players in salary that they could sign with the money that they saved off of this, two $20-25 million a year guys that they get, plus a second and a third round pick. Plus, if you really look at the numbers, it's a minor drop back on players that they're switching. I think this was a really good deal, but there's something else that is into the fold here. And you talk about getting into the weeds. there's something else they gained. And it's not in every single swap, but in a lot of the swaps, and some of them a significant amount, is youth. They've gotten a lot of youth when they swap these players. You look at Sam Darnold versus Geno Smith. Sam Darnold's 27, Geno Smith's 34. If you were able to retain Geno Smith, how much longer is he actually going to be a viable guy for this team? Do you get 1 year out of him? Do you get 2 more years out of him? You're getting up 36, 37 years old at that point. How much longer is he going to be a viable option for the team? When you look at Sam Darnold, if you got Sam Darnold on the upswing and he's really going to be that type of player that you think he's going to be, can he not play for you for easy 10 more years till he reaches the point that Geno Smith is at? That'd be his 37. 10 more years is when he turns 37 versus 3 to 4 years from now. So you get youth in Darnold. You swap, I think it's, amicable Cup and Metcalf. Metcalf slightly younger than Cooper Cup. Then on the other thing, Martez Valdez Scantling's it's certainly less, he's much younger than Tyler Lockett. So you get youth there, but I really think the quarterback position, that's the most important one. That's the one where I think Mike McDonald and co, when they're looking at this team saying, hey, we really need to start to understand where we're making our bets. Do we go all in on Geno Smith and pay him and maybe keep him for 1 to 2 more seasons after this? Or do we go all in on a guy like Sam Darnold, who, like you said, only a couple points lost when you look at PFF grade, and say, hey, we're going to gamble on this guy, and if it pays off, we can have 10 more years of Sam Darnold that will be to the point where he's going to, fizzle out of the league, no longer be around. I think that's a good bet that they're making. I think all of these moves have sound basis to them. They're analytically strong, and what they got back as well. If you just take the age and, slight loss in PFF points, it sounds like, okay, I could see where you're saying that. I could see how that's a good move. But when you factor in the fact that there's a longer longevity, especially at the quarterback position with these players, I think the bet gets significantly better because you have a payoff that could last you for a dynasty's sake if it works out versus something that, hey, we're here for a short time, a good time, not a long time if we re-sign a guy like Geno Smith.
Yeah, and we talk about all the time on this channel, right? There are two ways to win championships in the NFL, right? You either have an elite superstar quarterback, first ballot Hall of Famer. We're talking about like Patrick Mahomes, of course, or Tom Brady, right? That's one way to win a championship. Or you have an incredible infrastructure around a good, solid quarterback. That's like the Philadelphia Eagles with a phenomenal defense, good skilled players, a top 3 offensive line, and Jalen Hurts is a good quarterback. He's not a great quarterback. And what the Seattle Seahawks are doing here is I think they're investing in that infrastructure. Because if you look at the Cooper Cup deal, it's a 3-year deal, right? Long term, it's not going to hurt the Seattle Seahawks. Hopefully, he does great things in Seattle, obviously coming home a little bit to Washington State. But look, Cooper Cup, you're not mortgaging the house bringing in Cooper Cup. Marquez Valdez-Scantling's like a 1-year flyer who, not certainly not mortgaging anything there. And Sam Darnold, even if he does great things, it's a 3-year deal the way it's currently structured. So it's not like, again, you're blowing up your entire franchise. What the Seahawks are doing here is acquiring essentially a lot of cap space and more draft capital to invest in the infrastructure. And I think that is so important for teams to understand. If you don't believe you have that guy, you don't believe you have that Mahomes, that prime Aaron Rodgers, that Brady, right? That Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen kind of guy. And there's some guys that I think also fall into that, like a Matthew Stafford, for example. I think he falls into that. But if you don't believe you have that guy, and as good as Geno Smith was, I think we can all agree he wasn't that guy, or at least barring something very surprising, he wasn't going to be that guy. It was more important to invest in elite infrastructure, and that's what the Seattle Seahawks did here. DK Metcalf's a really good player, but the question is, can we get DK Metcalf and in return replace his production, or at least 80% of it, with Cooper Cup and get draft capital and cap space to make our team even better? If you look at what DK Metcalf gave last year versus Cooper Cup, we're talking about 3 points of PFF. You can get a second-round pick, and let's say you use it on a wide receiver. You get younger and cheaper, and Cooper Cup and the second-round pick combined are more than DK Metcalf, and then you got $15 million in additional cap space, right? That's what smart teams do. That's what the Eagles have done for a number of years. They've recognized that they can aggregate star talent across multiple players. That's what they did on defense, right? If you look at the Philadelphia Eagles defense, they really don't have like one all-pro guy. They don't have like a 20-cent guy. They've got 7, 8, 9 young guys, veterans across the board that just are very, very good good and a lot of very team-friendly deals. Some guys they signed on cheap veterans, some guys they drafted in the first, second round, some guys were late round steals, whatever it may be. They're just a collective, really good bunch without one key superstar. The Patriots forever were built this way. This is the model you can use if you don't have Patrick Mahomes or one of those guys. And credit to the Seattle Seahawks, Mike McDonald and John Schneider for recognizing it, because it's not easy to do. It's not easy to trade DK Metcalf. It's not easy to cut Tyler Lockett. It's not easy to trade Geno Smith. I know there's a lot of people in Seattle like, what the heck are we doing here? What's Sam, like Sam Darnold? What? 2 years ago, Sam Darnold was a bust, and now we're getting rid of a quarterback that's had, the success that Geno Smith has had over the past 2 seasons for Sam Darnold, right? DK Metcalf was the future, or one of the future superstars, current superstar for Seattle, and we're getting rid of him. Look, it's all about building the infrastructure. Like, and those are good players, right? And it hurts to get rid of good players, but it's more important to build long-term infrastructure. And Seattle does have some good pieces already. Johnson Smith and Jigba, he's going to be a future star as well. You talk about a youth movement. If you've got a future star, let him be your future star. Get rid of the pieces around him, the Lockett, the Metcalf. Let Jackson Smith and Jigba emerge as the leader and use some of this cap space and use some of this dollars to surround him with younger talent for the long term. And that's what Seattle is doing here. They're reorienting their team about building a deep, talented infrastructure. And look, maybe Sam Darnold is good enough if they build that infrastructure to win a title. I personally kind of doubt it. I think he's kind of the bridge guy. But regardless, this is the smart approach to take if you don't have Patrick Mahomes. You have a lot of teams that think they have Patrick Mahomes and they invest too much and they end up never winning anything, right? You don't want to fall into that path. Credit to John Schneider and Mike McDonald here for making the difficult moves. Winning championships isn't easy, right? You have to make a lot of challenging, difficult decisions that are often going to be unpopular. They don't always work out, but credit to the Seahawks for being willing to make these tough decisions. And when you look at the numbers and you look at the data, it actually makes a lot of sense.